record it. Yeah, 200. Thing like that. It's recorded. And
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
yo,
We are back in the building
already know.
with my boy Ori.
Hmm?
What's going on, man?
I'm tired, bro.
Yeah? Why you tired?
Tired, bro.
Why you tired? You know what? Didn't you just watch this thing with LeBron James today saying tired is only in the mind?
Hey, no, listen, no. Nah, when I say I'm tired, I'm not like physically tired. It's just that.
So you're mentally
much
tired?
shit. Nah, this is not. Actually, correction. No. It's reverse. When I say I'm tired, I'm not mentally tired. I'm just physically tired.
Oh, okay.
My
okay.
buddy's like, yo, man, take a sleep, man. Go to bed.
Go to
sleep.
bed. Don't worry. You can sleep when you're dead, yo.
Nah, bro.
That's what they said. Don't worry. You can sleep after the episode.
Nah, listen.
I get some nice sleep.
I got a lot of stuff to do, man.
Well, then I guess. I don't know. But first things first.
As always.
As always,
Yes, sir.
we got to give thanks to God
Yes, sir.
for giving us the ability to be up, to be alive, to be here, to be on the podcast. Another episode. We're on episode
15? Yeah, 15. No, 15.
15? Well, episode 15.
Yeah, 13 was Merlin.
Yo.
14 was a Daisy. And
We're on episode 0.5 like 2 months, 3 months ago?
I think it was 2 months.
Maybe 3 months ago.
Yeah.
We're on episode 15 now. 15. That's progress. 1% better every day.
Yes, sir.
So that's big. Huge. Super happy about that. On our last episode, recapping from our last episode, we had the beautiful Daisy Hubbard on the show.
What you said her name was they going to Sabrina or something?
They call her originally Sabrina.
Yeah,
Her real name is Sabrina,
yeah.
but goes by Daisy.
Mm-hmm.
She was dropping some gems.
Yes, sir.
You know, she showed us all this different things that she's doing, all the different venues and ventures that she's doing.
Yeah.
And she spoke about the importance of moving in love.
Yeah.
So in everything that she's doing, she's trying to move with, you know, those proper intentions of love, you know what I'm saying? And so by doing that, a lot of good things come out of it,
True,
you know, because it just creates a lot of great opportunities for you as well.
When the bar, she was like, oh, it's not a setback, it's a setup.
Exactly. It's not a setback, it's a setup, you know? So exactly how you need those obstacles and those struggles to help you.
Yeah.
So today we
good.
have a special guest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited. I'm very pleased. One of my good friends from work. So our guest today is from Sydney, not Australia, Sydney, Nova Scotia. You know, Sydney, Nova Scotia. I didn't even know they had Sydney, Nova Scotia and Sydney, but that's sick. So Sydney, Nova Scotia. He came to Alberta at about 5 months. And he went to Grand Mac to start, and he completed his education degree eventually at U of A, which he transferred over to finish at U of A. So he also works in a TELUS fiber supply chain. So without further ado, my man, Ryan McKenzie. Yes, sir. How's it going? Is the mic?
I think it should be close.
Sure.
A little better.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Well, I must say I'm very happy because Ryan at my previous job, Ryan was my boss and very dope. He made my days very fun.
Oh, wow,
you
nice.
know, we would talk about sports, talk about work, talk about just different things. I'd always ask him questions, and he would just always give me like lots of great advice and just tips and stuff like that. So
Nice.
I'm really excited to have him on the podcast today.
Nice.
So this is dissection now. Dissection.
The lights just got a little
So, Ryan, tell us about your earlier days. So you grew up, or you were born in Sydney, Nova Scotia, but you came to Alberta pretty young, right? About at 5 months. So kind of tell us what it was like growing up in Alberta and kind of where you grew up in Alberta, too, as well.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you guys both for taking the time to have me on today.
No problem.
It's an honor to join the ranks of the
Hey.
grind.
Hey, let's go. Yes. I like that. Thank you.
So yeah, I was born in Sydney, Nova Scotia, which is on the island of Cape Breton. So if you've ever seen a map of Nova Scotia, there's like mainland Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And then there's that little U-shaped island at the north kind of tip between mainland and Newfoundland. That's Cape Breton Island. Sydney's the major city on the island.
Okay.
Moved out to Edmonton when I was 5 months old.
Damn.
My mom's was a nurse at the U of A hospital. My dad started out as an electrician, working out at the time. The two bases in Edmonton were a little more functional.
Okay.
In terms of an actual, like, not that they're not doing actual army stuff out there, but they were a lot bigger than they are now. So they had a whole, they still do, but they had a whole large maintenance crew out there kind of thing that he was a part of. And yeah, my mom started out doing her thing as a nurse, kind of grinding her way up. She's still in the healthcare field now. She's a director with AHS, working primarily out of the Royal Alec Hospital right now.
Okay.
And so yeah, we started out, one of my earliest memories were probably from living in a small apartment on the north side of Edmonton.
Okay.
There's I don't know where you guys know if where Bishop Savern is, the elementary school, and like Mary Butterworth and stuff.
But I know where Mary
just
Butterworth
off,
is.
just off the Castlemaine Road there. Yeah, there's a little apartment by, like, there used to be a Taze gas station. There's like a little mini mart between there and I think it's 153rd Ave or something like that.
Okay.
Most of my childhood was spent growing up in Dunluce, the Dunluce area, just sort of across the street from, you know, where St. Lucie and Dunluce are, the elementary schools.
No, I don't.
I don't know that. No.
North side. So like north side.
Okay.
But I know where the Mary Butterworth is. I know where that.
It's literally, so if you're coming down Castlemaine Road and you, like, you know, you turn towards off of Castlemaine Road to go towards Mary Butterworth. If you turn the opposite direction off Castlemaine Road on the same road, it goes towards those schools.
Okay.
So a lot of my formative years growing up in a townhouse complex in Castle Downs.
Okay.
Played basketball and baseball primarily growing up as a kid, and then when I was about 10 years old, we moved out to a small town called Morininville, which is about 10 minutes north of St. Albert up the road, and I did basically junior high and high school out there. Okay. And I still reside in the town today.
Okay. Did you play any sports in high school and junior high growing up there?
Not so much in high school. I was kind of what you would call one of the fat kids in high school. So my coordination and stuff like that wasn't as optimum as it'd be. They say some people peak in high school. I peaked in like 4th grade. I think it was 9 or 10 years old. We won the city championships in basketball. So like city champs, 94, 95. Yeah.
Hey, I was just born that year.
Go Dunluce.
There you go.
And then, so yeah, I moved out to Morininville, and then for junior high, I was still kind of playing competitive baseball. Did like AAA rep ball up until I was about 14 or 15. Okay. And then after that, sort of developed, like, you know, started to move away from sports and more into like girls and music and stuff like that. You know how it can go.
Yep, that's true. Different interest change as you get all the interest change. Priorities, right? No, that's super dope. Okay. So, what was it like about growing up in Morininville? Because I guess Morininville is a bit of a smaller town. Yeah. So then, when did you eventually move out to not to Edmonton, but coming into Edmonton? What was the difference you could see being in Morininville and other places?
I mean, I think it was like, from my own lived experience, I don't know that it was all that much different than what I experienced in Edmonton. Yeah. Because like growing up where I was in Edmonton, it was, like I say, like a townhouse complex. And at the time, there was a lot of young families that were living in the complex anyway. Yeah. So there was a whole pack of us kids that were within like 4 or 5 years of each other. Yeah. To the point where, like, in summer vacation, we could go out and we would basically divide ourselves into 2 baseball teams. Yeah. And like, you got, like, this is like 1991, 1992. Okay. So one guy had a computer, and it was like a huge deal that he had a program on his computer that he could basically track our stats. Because we just played every day in summer vacation, and it was like the Blue Jays and the Athletics or whatever we called ourselves. And one guy had a computer that could run stats, so you had like batting averages and ERAs and stuff like that. And we thought that was just like the best thing ever.
The pro league now, man.
But it was like there was a huge sense of community, and even within the complex, like after dinner time, the kids had the run of the place, whether we were playing like street hockey or baseball, or we were playing hide and go seek or stuff like that when the sun went down, kind of thing. Like we sort of had the run of the place. And it was the same in Morininville, moving into like junior high and high school, but it was more just sort of like the perimeter expanded, you know what I mean? It wasn't so much like your mom was like, stay within the complex, you got to stay within, so she could stand on the step and like scream at you for dinner kind of thing.
Sure. You had a bigger, because that town is a little bit smaller, so everyone kind of knows each other.
And so it was like, for us, it was a matter of like roaming around the town to different spots, and you would find different groups of people that were hanging out at different sort of home bases around town. And if you were cool with everybody, then you could basically just maneuver around town and go from stop to stop and see everybody kind of doing their thing.
Okay. Nice.
Because I mean, it's a small. It was. I mean, it's a little bit bigger now. I think it's a little over 10,000 people now. But when I first moved out there, and for the better part of my time out there, it was a town of about 5,000 people. Yeah. So there wasn't really a whole heck of a lot to do, but like beat the streets and try and stay out of trouble as best you can.
True. Nice.
Okay. So after you had gone to high school and junior high in Morininville now, so now coming to university, going to university, right? You went to Grand McEwen. So can you tell us a little bit about the experience you had in Grand McEwen? Like, what was it like there?
Yeah, well, my whole university experience is a little bit different because I was a freshman at 27.
Okay.
When I had first started, I had worked for basically 10 years in the private sector and then went back to start my university degree. So I didn't really have like your typical.
So sorry. So what made you want to go back? Like why? Because you had already been working in that field now. So why go back?
Well, it was a combination of sort of apathy towards what I was doing. Like I didn't really have a passion for it in general, which makes it really difficult to want to do it every day and do it to the best of your abilities.
Sure, that's true.
And then couple that with the fact that I sort of hit the wall professionally with where I was going to be able to go with the company for the foreseeable future. So it was really just a matter of making a decision to sort of like better myself and better my situation. You know, because like a university degree isn't a guarantee or anything, but it's some credibility on paper that you can start out and you can do something and you can, you can put the work in and you can do the grind and see something through to the very end.
True, that's true.
And I don't I don't think a university degree necessarily it doesn't necessarily raise your ceiling, but it might raise the basement a little bit for you a little bit.
True.
But there's no guarantees in anything in life. So yeah, it was interesting to start at that period in my life. And I had a conversation once with a kid when I was doing a practicum in one of the high schools, and it was basically like the message that I was trying to deliver was like you spend most of your childhood waiting to be an adult, and it's almost like you expect this like switch is going to go off like you're going to wake up on your 23rd birthday or something and be like, I'm an adult now. But that never happens. You're never going to feel grown up kind of thing. And so it was like, I'm 27, but like I'm still cool. Like I still go to the club and do some of the things that I did when I was 21, but then you actually be 27 and you get around like 19 and 20-year-olds and you're like, no, man, I'm totally and I'm completely fine with that.
That's true.
No, okay. No, so you said that like it was probably, like you said, it was probably a little bit different having that experience coming at a later age. But did you think that it gave you any advantages, or were there disadvantages like of coming at a later age?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that like in terms of a disadvantage, it's probably a little bit harder from a social perspective to like integrate yourself. It wasn't so when you do your education degree, at least here in Alberta, you have to declare whether you're going for secondary or elementary education. Because if you declare for elementary, when you go to university, then you basically have to get credits in like all like the whole spectrum of education that you would be expected. So you got to take English classes and social studies classes and science classes and math classes. And I'm just not going to survive in a university math class or a science class kind of thing. Like I don't even have my grade 12 math. I'm not going to be able to do like second year university calculus and stuff. That's just not going to happen. So the one of the benefits of going for your secondary degree is that you can declare a major and a minor, so you can kind of chart your own path a little bit more easier. And I think even when you get into the into the work field, the elementary teachers can't cross over into junior high and high school, but if you're a junior, like if you're a secondary teacher, you can still move down into elementary and teach if you so choose, for whatever reason. And so it wasn't so bad in the humanities classes, because you're just in like a giant lecture hall, whether it's like sociology or psychology or philosophy or history or political science or whatever it is. You're basically just sitting there while like some person sits at the front of the room and maybe has a PowerPoint presentation, and they just lecture for 60 to 90 minutes a day. But my one of my passions in high school was doing drama, and so I declared drama as my minor, so it allowed me to take more drama classes in university. And that was where it was sort of difficult being the older guy, because you had like, especially with drama at that point, it's you're a very collaborative unit for basically the entire semester, and like you're doing individual stuff or you're paired up with different people at different times, but it's just easier to sort of like coalesce with the group, I find, if you have more to relate to them with. And so being a little bit older, it was sort of trying to find a way to kind of like muscle into the group without being like Steve Buscemi from that Funny or Die, where he comes up with a skateboard and it's like, how do you do, fellow kids? Like I felt like I had one point where some guy in one of my drama classes literally stopped me after class, and we were just kind of chit-chatting or whatever, and he goes, so I wanted to ask you this because everybody else is afraid to, but how old are you? And it wasn't even just that he was just like, how old are you, but it was the emphasis on the R, because it's like we've been like struggling to place this, and thought she's narrowed down to somewhere between like 25 and 45, and it's like, well, I'm 30, and they're like, okay. And it's like you can almost see them in the background, like half of them are like handing the other one being like, here you go.
I told you he was 30.
I can remember doing we had to put together a monologue that was based around just a random job, like a random occupation, and I went to ask the teacher what he thought would be a good idea for me, and he said that you should be like an undercover police officer. And he never outright said it, but I'm pretty sure that was his way of being like, everybody thinks you're an undercover. Like, everybody thinks you're a narc anyway. So you might as well just into it a little bit.
Just like lean into go full all into it. Go all into it. No, that's pretty funny.
That's wild still.
So you eventually transferred over to U of A, and you completed your education degree now, right? And I remember when we were talking at work, you told me that you did teach in school, right? So one question I actually wanted to ask you was, as a teacher, what's one thing that you learned about yourself, and what's one thing you learned from teaching kids, like about kids, like about teaching? Because like, I think it'll be viable even for me and for Ori, because Ori, he has a YouTube channel, right? And he's teaching people how to do photography from what his experience. And then for me, eventually I want to teach people with mindset and just training and stuff like that. So maybe what's something that you picked up that you learned about yourself when you were teaching, and also about students?
Well, I think one thing that I picked up about myself, particularly being in the classroom, is just how much you actually enjoy being able to sort of have those conversations, like, especially, I guess I should start more like, especially from me being from like a social studies background primarily. You're sort of dealing with like, you're dealing with like real world stuff, like this, like they always talk about how like there's so much stuff that you learn in school that you probably aren't going to really use after you walk out of there on your final day. But this is all stuff that's like practical, real world application, and it affects us all. And one thing I learned about myself was that I primarily focus, or I try to primarily focus my form of teaching in terms of trying to get them to learn how to think without trying to teach them what to think. And it's about like walking that fine line between, you know, because like one of the things that they like our professors tried to imbue to us in university, especially from a social studies perspective and like humanities in general, is like, you're not going to be able to really take your bias out of it. Like, you know, like they'll say like ideally a social studies teacher shouldn't be talking about who they vote for or who they support or yada, yada, yada. And to a certain extent, I completely agree that you shouldn't be actively trying to like convince the students of your position. Particularly, like then you start getting into like the fiduciary responsibility of like your position and the fact that you're in a level, like a position of authority, and you shouldn't be using that to form anybody's own opinion. So it's more, at least from the humanities perspective, I found it more effective to sort of just challenge everybody. Because one thing I try to get them to understand is like you're never gonna get. You'll never get to the end of understanding something better. And like it's like whether it's an ideology or an opinion or anything like that, like it's like an onion, right? Every layer you peel back is going to reveal another layer kind of thing. And you'll almost never get to the bottom of it. So you need to constantly keep digging and reevaluating and rethinking and going over like not only what your thoughts and opinions are, but try and have that level of self-awareness to understand where those thoughts and feelings come from and like where your position comes from and understand what sort of crafted you into that person that you are kind of thing and like how that's going to evolve with you over time, I guess.
Okay.
And what like in terms of what I discovered about teaching, the biggest thing that I found, at least with the kids and stuff, is like I guess it would work for any audience. Yeah. But as long as you can demonstrate and maintain like a baseline level of passion and enthusiasm for the material that you're trying to cover, then you're gonna stir up even like a small amount of passion and enthusiasm. Sure. In your audience, because it's automatically infectious. Like they will automatically feed off of it just because so it's like, you know, not that you have to go up, like not that I try and go up there and be a clown or anything about it, but like you have to you have to have that inherent sense of like, isn't this fun? Like aren't we having fun?
Because people feel because people are gonna you give or you get what you give, right? So like people, if I give off high energy, like it's automatically going to make you kind of, even if you were down, you're like, oh, prick up a little bit, as opposed to if I came into the room and I was just like, yo, Ori, Ryan, then you'd be like, even if you didn't want to, you'd be like, you might be down a little bit more, right? So I think that's actually very big.
Well, and it's like, I don't want to give off the impression that I have like a room full of 35 kids that are just sitting there like wide-eyed, like hanging on my every word, because like that's not how it's going to happen. Sure. Do not get that sort of response, particularly from like 15 or 16-year-olds when you're talking about like good governance and stuff like that. That's just not going to happen. But it's like one of the best compliments I ever got from a kid was basically like, I keep trying to block out your lectures, but you're too like you're just too passionate about it, so I can't even not pay attention. Like,
I like that.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you can't, even though you're actively trying to not pay attention in class. But you know, a win's a win, so you take what you can get.
I like that because that's something that's I'm gonna have to actually apply into my business and stuff. Like I think it will already come out just because I am passionate about it. But just like if you really put your passion about something, other people are gonna notice that and they're gonna see that it's genuine and authentic, right? So I think I actually like that point a lot. So that's very cool.
That's for days.
So how long did you teach for?
Well, I haven't actually since I finished with school, I haven't actually worked in the teaching force at all. So I had a 5-week practicum at Belrose High School in St. Albert, and then the next semester I did a 9-week practicum at Morininville Community High School, which is actually the high school that I graduated with, and my social studies teacher was actually the student. Like my liaison for the school there kind of thing, which was nice.
That's pretty nice. Yeah. Come back. Oh,
Small town benefits, right?
Come back full circle. So, all right. I know when we are working and stuff like that, we're always talking about lots of different things. And we started talking about travel, you know? And I know you've done lots of traveling. So tell us about maybe some of your travel experiences, you know, some of the places that you've gone to. And, like, maybe what's a place that, like, really stuck out to you, you know?
And why?
And why, yeah.
I mean, like, there's honestly, you know, when I get a chance to talk about traveling with people, that's one question that a lot of people ask. I'll be like, what's like the one place that stands out for you above everything else? And it's like, honestly, like,
It's hard to pick.
I don't know that I've ever been to a country that I didn't enjoy, like, absolutely immensely. Like, I mean, I guess the United States doesn't exactly stick out because it's kind of just like a, you know, there's minor differences, but it's basically an extension of being here kind of thing.
Yeah.
So starting out, one of the first trips overseas that I took was going to the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
I've been there twice so far, and like I absolutely love it. Just the whole, like, I mean, like, what's not to like with white sand and the turquoise water and all that kind of stuff. I found the people to be super awesome when I was there the entire time. We've been fortunate enough, my partner and I, we had a 3-year span where we did back-to-back trips to Europe and then a trip into Asia. So I think in those 3 years we managed to tick off about 12 or 13 countries.
Damn. That's crazy.
And so, like, the 2 trips to Europe were incredible. It was everything you kind of hope for going back into seeing, like, especially for me, like somebody who's coming out of university studying a bunch of, like, particularly like postmodern European history, and then getting to go into places like going into Germany and the Czech Republic and Poland and stuff like that, and seeing some of these places and these historical sites and stuff was really incredible. But I guess I would probably speak the highest of Asia, just because I wasn't exactly sure what to expect when I got over there, kind of thing, and was just like really blown away by like everything, like the landscapes and the culture, the people, the food, and stuff like that.
Was it like a tropical landscape, or was it more like
so essentially we had a 2 or 3 day layover in Tokyo because we were flying over with a Japanese carrier, and then we spent a month in Thailand just kind of going around that country. And after going from Bangkok, we went north to Chiang Mai, which is more jungles and mountain kind of thing, it's still a beautiful city. There's tons of like ancient Buddhist temples and stuff like that. There's Buddhist temples that are around everywhere. Like any town or city you go to are littered with these temples, and they're beautiful to look at. There's a city that's not far from Chiang Mai called Chiang Rai that has one of the nicest temples I think anybody's probably ever built. And then the rest of the time was down in the south in the islands for a lot of surfing kind of thing.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I have a question, because a lot of people say you haven't like experienced anything unless you start traveling, right? Would you say that's true? Like, does it give you a different perspective on things, seeing how other people live, going to different places, different cultures?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could do any sort of significant traveling, particularly to places that are different from what you're used to, without it having some sort of impact on you. I would like to think that it has allowed me to sort of broaden my perspectives, and even to just get a different sense of you know how the other half lives. Even noticing the differences between here and some of the other European countries and stuff. Like, it's like so much of our culture is taken from how they model their own societies and stuff, and then you go over there and you see, oh, this is a little bit different here, or we do a little bit different over there, kind of thing.
That's true.
But one of the things that I think has helped me with my perspective, especially when it comes to people, is like, and I think like, I always feel bad quoting it because it sounds really hackney, because I'm pretty sure it's from an Apple commercial from like the Rio Games or something like that.
Oh, wow.
But there was like a phrase that really resonated with me that I feel speaks to like how I felt traveling, was the more I traveled and the more cultures I experienced, the more people that I got to know, it sort of hammers home the point that like when you really boil down to it, push comes to shove, we're more alike than we are unalike.
Yeah, true.
No matter where you are, what you're doing, kind of thing. And I find, especially in this world, in this social climate, it doesn't hurt to get reminded of that every once in a while. And it's nice to be able to sort of, if you have the means, it's nice to be able to step outside of your bubble and see how the other half lives and find out like what the differences are, but also discover the similarities.
Yeah.
What would you say the biggest tips for someone who wants to travel, like maybe travel to those different countries or just countries in general? What kind of tips would you give? Like any reminders, certain guides? Because we might be going there and get robbed or something, or who knows?
Well, you know what? We've been to some places where like you go and you check the government travel advisory and they're like, high caution area, and they'll list, pickpockets and stuff like that. But like we've been, in those 3 years, we managed to do France, Hungary, the Czech Republic, Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, Scotland, Croatia, Greece, Thailand, Japan, and the United States and the Dominican mixed in there. And we've never been robbed. We've never had like any sort of, negative interaction with really anybody. Like one of the biggest things we learn is like you grow up watching like Western movies and stuff, and any sort of period piece, it's always like the Japanese and the Germans that are the bad guys in the movie, because it's like the two enemies from like World War II that everybody draws off of. And then you go to these places and the Germans and the Japanese are like the nicest, friendliest people kind of thing. Like we would have people that would stop us in subway stations and stuff just because you look like a tourist, right? Like especially in Tokyo, where you don't really have a fighting chance, because at least if you're in Germany, there's like, you may not understand the word, but there's like 6 or 7 letters in the middle of the word where you're like, I think I know what that means. But in Japan, like there's no
chance.
There's no guessing, right? They're just literally characters on a wall, and you're like, okay, well,
what is this? Yeah, you don't know.
Like how?
Everyone true. Like even just taking your phone and trying to use Google Translate, like you can't type it out. In German, you can still like type out the letters. You know what I mean? But in Japanese, whatever, you're like,
don't even know what the
characters are. Take a picture of it, put it through or something.
True.
But we on more than one occasion, we had somebody where they could see us looking at and pointing at the signs and stuff on the wall, and somebody would just come over and be like, "Do you need some help? Can I like where are you trying to get to? I can show you which line."
True.
Yeah.
But I mean, outside of that, it was really, it's more about how you would behave in any metropolitan area. Like even if you're walking, even if you left a bar on Jasper Ave at 2 a.m, maybe don't cut down the back alley. That's not super lit up kind of thing. Or like, a lot of it is like there are certain scams that certain places have that they'll use as like tourist traps and stuff like that. But it's just generally about, if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right.
Yeah.
If you can stick to your,
intuition.
Follow your intuition and basically behave like you're in somebody else's house while at the same time, just like, if the locals are doing it, it's probably okay.
Okay to do it, And again, I think one of the biggest thing with traveling too is like it's the mind you're going with. If you're thinking, oh, they're gonna rob me, they're gonna do this, most likely you're probably gonna get robbed. That's true. But if you're just going there and be like, I'm just going there to have fun, explore the culture and see what's going on, you barely have that experience.
And I think that kind of goes back to the same thing with you saying with his teaching. It's like what you give out. If I give out that passion or like that want to, like, I want to explore and see all these cool things, I think people reciprocate that as opposed to like if I'm like, yo, I'm scared. I'm thinking they'd be like, yo, let's rob this person.
Because they're calling your attention. Imagine if you're out like in Germany or whatever, and then you have a bag and then you hold it.
Like, someone they have something to hide. What does he have in there?
What does he have in there? If we're just like, bro, literally, like you said, if you're just in Jasper Ave downtown and you're literally doing that, guarantee one person's gonna see and be like, yo, something's fishy about this guy. Let's check him out. So I don't know. I do know traveling is fun. Yeah, changes the perspective, especially when like people from like North America go down to like African countries and then they see that it's not actually the way it is in movies. In movies, they're like, oh, the huts and everything. I'm like. But when they go down there, like, yo, it's actually, technically, it's kind of the same lifestyle I have back home. Modernized buildings, internet, lights, good road, cars, and then you're like, wow.
Didn't expect that.
Changes the mind.
Yeah, changes. And I think like Ryan was saying, it opens you up to more perspectives, more views and stuff like that. You become more understanding with different people, right? Like I'm sure that if you just not saying that just growing up in Edmonton or Alberta is bad, but if you just grew up here and you never left and been anywhere, if someone else comes from a different culture, a different country, it's hard for you to understand because you never experienced anything else. Going and traveling to other places, then you experience different things. You're like, oh, okay, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
So
I have a question, because you've gone to a lot of countries. Do you have any financial tips for anyone trying to travel? Like, what did you apply to your own life? Because it's I think you mentioned close to 14, 15 countries. Yeah. It's not hard to do that. It's hard to do that with good money. So what financial tips did you apply to make it easier for you?
So I'll preface it by saying the first trip that we went to Europe was five or six countries, basically France and it was Paris and Amsterdam were our layovers. Yeah. And then Budapest, Prague, Berlin, Krakow, and Warsaw were the cities that we spent the majority of our time in.
Moving.
And then the next year we took my partner's parents with us, and that was more hopping around the continent. So the first trip, it wasn't as expensive, because once you get into really most of the Western and Central European countries, the trains are stretched out across country to country.
That's true.
So you're only talking about, depending on, and that's the thing, depending on what countries you were in, because we were both in university at the time when we went to Europe the first time. Yeah. So we made a conscious decision to not really go to France or England or Amsterdam or Switzerland or Italy or any of these famously really expensive countries. Yeah. It was sort of like Germany was our one. I think they're all part of the European Union, but I think Germany was the only one outside of France and the Netherlands. Germany was the only one that was actually on the euro. Yeah. So countries like Hungary and the Czech Republic and Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia, Romania, all these countries that are sort of in the central moving into Eastern Europe, they're in the European Union, so you can freely travel through the countries. Yeah. But they're on their own currency still. Yeah. So even going into Poland, and I think Poland was, I can't remember if it was Poland or Hungary was the cheapest, but one of them, it was 24-1 on the currency exchange kind of thing.
That's true still.
Balling over there.
Being in Budapest for essentially $1 Canadian, you could buy a 2-liter bottle of Heineken or a decent drinkable wine from the store. So it wasn't hard to go out and do the social thing. And the other thing that couples into it is hostels. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's
meet a lot of
cool people. Go with it, because it's you wanna. That was one of the things I wanted to kind of mention too about what I learned about traveling, was how to balance being a tourist with being a traveler. Yeah. Because the tourist way to go about it is hotels or a cruise or hiring tour guides and stuff like that, and more staying that. Where doing a traveler would be more I would say getting an Airbnb or even getting even a hostel to a lesser extent. Yeah. But the hostel is good, especially if you're you're young and ready to have fun and stuff like that, because there's already that inherent built-in social ecosystem that you're living in already, and you're meeting people from all over the world anyway that are all there to do the same things that you're doing. And then you're talking about getting a bed for $10 a night kind of thing.
Some cheap.
So if you're trying to do it on the cheap, then we were able to do it on that trip by sort of going back and forth between we spent 5 days in Budapest. And it was the first night we rented a hotel because we were traveling. We didn't know what to expect with the time change, because it was 8 hours ahead or something like that. Sure. Yeah. So we'll get a hotel room. We'll get ourselves we'll get a good night's sleep, get ourselves readjusted. The next 2 nights we went to a party hostel, which was 3 underlines on the word party hostel kind of thing. It was basically, we rang the door and we got met by this 19-year-old dreadlocked British kid. And who's going through the write-ups and stuff, and they basically gave us the rundown of there's like crazy stuff that's going to go on down here.
Yeah.
Like,
it's going to be wild.
You're going to walk into your room and you might find something, like you might find a present that somebody left you on the floor. Yeah. You might find people like congregating in your bed when you get home.
Sex or something like that.
And the message was basically like, we're not going to do anything about this. So if you're not cool with that, that's fine. We'll totally find you a bed at one of our sister hostels that's a little bit more your speed. Yeah. But if you're going to stay here, it's gonna be wild. This is what's happening. Yeah. And it was like, sign me up, kind of like, I'm in. But at the same time, it was good to sort of step away from the tourist side of it, because like the hostels are still, I would say, kind of touristy, because they're, you know, they do have groups set up that'll take you out to like the major sites and stuff like that. But you're still basically touring around with a bunch of people that are pretty similar to you, going around to just clubs and stuff like that, which is like totally cool. But then on the other side is if you can find yourself getting an Airbnb, especially like outside the city center in the tourist areas, and actually like spending some time where the locals are living and doing the local thing, and not just necessarily doing the tourist thing. And that's what I find to be the most, I guess, enlightening aspect of it, is being able to integrate yourself in with the locals and sort of get the feel of that local flavor. And that's what separates being a tourist versus being a traveler. It's like the tourist is going to go and you want to try and keep things as comfortable as possible or as close to home as possible, kind of thing. Sure. Like my mother-in-law, God love her, but we walked around 5 different countries in Europe trying to find Canadian whiskey. And it was like, we were in Scotland. At a whiskey distillery, and we couldn't find rye, and it wasn't good enough. But it's like you literally have like
all these different ones,
like it's like when in Rome, drink tequila kind of thing, you know, like.
That's true.
Yeah, because there's so much. I know what you mean.
But to me, that's like, don't be afraid to dive in head first, because most of the places that I went to, and if you guys are planning on going to Thailand, it was especially that well. You'd probably be more likely to find somebody that was willing to welcome you into their home for dinner. Probably. Than having to go out to a restaurant and buy food or something like that.
I don't know if you know those guys. Like, I follow them on YouTube. Yes Theory. I don't know if you've heard of them before. So they have this mindset where the ability to say yes to anything. So they can literally, I've seen a couple of videos of them where they walk up to somebody in person and literally be like, what are you doing right now? We're going to take a trip to, like, it can name like Europe right now. Literally. Some people, like, they can do like 10, 20 people. One person will say yes. Experience of a lifetime. So like I literally, like I remember, like
it's pretty cool.
I'm trying to see the word I want to use. So like, shit, I forgot my word. But it was kind of relating to what you just said, in the sense of like, don't be afraid to like dive in and just go after it. Because like the amount of experience you can have and people you can meet can change your life. You can go to one place and meet one person and you don't know, that person might be something like might give the next idea for the big thing that you might do. So yeah.
That's true. I think that's why it's so cool to travel, because you never know who you're gonna meet. Like you could travel somewhere and you can meet like you don't know who you can connect with. You might connect with someone who's actually a millionaire or a billionaire down there who runs out and he just really likes your vibe and he's just like, yo, you know what? I'm gonna go with it. Yeah. You could do that. Or you could just like, you never know who you can meet, you never know what could happen. So I think that's gonna be super cool. It's like if you start traveling, what would you say is an obstacle or a struggle that comes to with traveling?
I mean, I guess part of it that comes with it, you know, you want to say language barriers are a big one. Although most of the places that I've traveled, I never really found it to be that much of a struggle because most, you know, chances are you're going to be able to find somebody around that can speak English. True. Or, you know, again, like it's one thing if you're in a French-speaking country or Spanish or Italian or German or like another Latin-based language. You can pretty much piece stuff together yourself, like I say, because there's enough similarities between words and context and stuff like that that you can piece it together. But even moving into like Poland and Hungary and stuff like that, where they're not really Latin-based languages, and then like I say, going into Asia and stuff like that, it can be a little bit harder to navigate stuff, and like there's certain cultural aspects that can get lost in translation that way. Like I remember taking, you know, like a 9-hour flight from Vancouver to Tokyo and landing in Tokyo and then taking the train. I can't even, because there's 2 airports in Tokyo, I can't even recall which one it was, taking the train from the airport into the city. and getting out of the train station and starting to smoke and realizing that like all these people on the street are walking by me giving me dirty looks until you realize, you know, an hour and 2 cigarettes later that there's no public smoking on the streets in Tokyo, and they have designated spots all around the city that you can smoke at, so you can't just walk down the street with it or stand on a street corner. You have to do it. And like luckily I was standing exactly 15 feet away from the alleyway where the designated smoking area was. But it's enough time that you're like, oh, okay. Well, like,
people are looking at
that's why everybody's giving me a dirty look, because I'm a jerk. Okay, good.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess, the difference in cultures can,
it's key. It's really key because, like, when you travel, you get to experience, like, why people think the way they think.
Yeah, that's very true.
Like, because I came from Nigeria, so there's a certain way I think back there. But because I've traveled to, like, a couple of European countries, and then I came here, it was easier for me to, like, adapt. Because low-key, we kind of think the same. Like, because I went to the UK. So UK and Canada, like, they have, like, a good relationship. They kind of think the same. There's a little bit of difference, but they still think the same. So, if I didn't have that experience coming in here, I'd be like, oh, shit, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to, like, balance it. So that's why I recommend anyone, like, literally, before you settle down, before you have any kids, travel as much as you can, because once you have kids, it's a different ball game. So like when you get married, it's a different ball game. Like travel, because it changes your mind. Because now when you see somebody do something, you understand like, oh, okay, this is probably the reason why. Because maybe this person came from this background, so maybe that's why he act the way the person act the way they act. That's why whenever someone do something, I'm like, okay, why is the person doing this? Like, why? Maybe it's like the way he was raised, whatever. I don't know. Traveling is key. It's good. It really is.
Yeah,
it's expensive.
Well, and like I say, like the countries that we've chosen a lot of the time were specifically chosen for economical reasons. Like there's certain places that you can go to, you know, even in Asia, like spending a couple days in Japan. You know, we spent probably the same amount of money that we did in like the first week and a half that we were in Thailand. Because that was the other thing I wanted to mention was like between the first trip to Europe was 24 days. The second trip to Europe was 30 days, and the trip to Thailand was 30 days. And for my partner and I to go, I don't think we spent $4,000 combined on the trip for like flights, accommodations, food, and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, flights is cheap because international travel, I think, is cheaper than imagine international travel is cheaper than local travel.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you get to Europe. There's so many like local carriers that are flying around the continent where like you can literally like we were checking, I think it was Skyscanner and stuff like that, and you could go from, you know, Paris to Budapest for like $45 last minute kind of thing if you wanted to. Just because they have the options.
Come on, man.
No, I think it's because like there's no little like like you said, local airlines that's flying from one spot to the other. Because I'll give you a realistic. Canada is big. So
Canada is
from Toronto, like from Edmonton to Toronto, I think it's like 5 hours. 6 hours. I'm from Nigeria. From Nigeria to UK, it's around 5-6 hours. So I'm going from continent to continent, 5 hours trip. I'm in the same country. It's that same time. So
that's true,
in a way, I don't blame them for the price rate because Canada is big and it's expensive. But still, you can still find a way to make it work.
You guys can make it a little bit.
Well, and part of it too is also government regulation. So when we went over to Europe on our first trip, when we started to plan it, originally we were going to go to Australia because we had mutual friends that were getting married that summer. My partner has an aunt that lives down there, so it was like, I have a cousin that's in New Zealand, so we were like, we'll just bounce around and go and visit some people, and Australia seems cool. And then we started to price it out, and it was like, this is going to be like
a little bit
$7,000 if we want to do what we want to do. So we're both in university, and that's not really feasible. So we had to change our plans on the fly. But we had already booked a flight from Edmonton to Vancouver because we wanted to spend an extra day or two in Vancouver with my partner's family and then fly out to Australia. So when we flew to Europe, we actually flew from, the original flight was Vancouver to Paris on Air France. And so we arrive at the Vancouver airport the day of the flight, cross over security, got like our duty-free bag and all that stuff. We're ready to go. And the flight was scheduled to leave at like, we'll call it like 2:15 in the afternoon. And so we're sitting there and we're sitting there and we're sitting there, and it's like 2:37,
Yeah.
And the guy at the gate comes on the little microphone and is like, so there's a delay. And we're like, yeah. We were supposed to be in the air like 7 minutes ago. And I was like, so we don't really have any updates right now, but when we're trying to figure out what's going on, and when we know, you'll know. Like, okay, cool. So the delay gets to be like an hour and a half long.
Wow.
And the guy comes back on the microphone and he's like, okay, so it turns out that there's something wrong with the autopilot that they use when they're making the cross over the Atlantic.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get the part to get the plane fixed. We'll let you know. Okay, cool. So the delay gets to be like 4 hours now.
Damn.
And the guy comes back on and goes, okay. So we didn't get the part. They were supposed to send it to our airport. They sent it to another airport. So we're calling around to a bunch of other carriers to see if somebody has this part lying around. We'll let you know. Okay. The delay hits the 5 hour mark and the guy comes on the intercom and verbatim says, we didn't get the part, but we're reasonably certain that the plane received its appropriate repairs and will make the trip to Paris. Like, literally said the word reasonably certain. And you're like,
he's like,
I'm about to make a 9 hour transatlantic flight. I would
No
like something
autopilot.
a little bit more definitive than reasonably certain.
You can
So,
make it.
essentially, we fired off an email when we landed to Air France being like, this is outrageous, and this like completely started our trip off on the wrong foot, and like, what's going on? So fast forward 24 days, we're packing up in Warsaw to fly home. My partner checks her email. She goes, Ryan, I got an email from Air France. And I'm like, what does it say? Because like, I'm used to dealing with Air Canada or WestJet, right? So in this situation, it would be like, we're really sorry that your trip went this way.
Nothing we can do.
Here's a $25 coupon for food that expired last week. Thank you for flying Air Canada. And Air France is like, yeah, we're like really sorry that you guys had this experience, and due to EU regulations, because your flight was X amount of kilometers long and your delay was X amount of hours long, you're entitled to a refund of your flight costs. So as we speak, there's 2 certified checks in the mail right now for you and Ryan for $875 each.
Damn.
And it was like, okay, that basically paid for our trip to Europe the next year, because it was basically 90% of our refunded money. I think we ended up flying to Europe that year for $125 round trip or something like that.
That didn't waste my time.
Which is not something that you should ever bank on, but it did change our perspective, where like every time we were in an airport in Europe and they were like, there's going to be a bit of a delay, we were like, push it back.
Be like, oh, you guys are fixing it? No, man, it's okay. Take your time, man.
I actually didn't know that though. So I actually didn't know, because most of the time I never knew that, but I having a delay. Like, okay, you just stay. But I never knew that you could.
That EU,
like
man.
All right, bless.
Those damn socials.
Give me some money moves.
We're gonna make some moves, and we're gonna hurry up.
Emails, man.
Like, yo, hey, I was 5 minutes late. The plane was 5 minutes late.
I'm taking proof.
I'm taking
I'll be
proof.
at the airport.
Here's the delay. I need to be reimbursed.
It's a 2 hour minimum, and then the money meter starts running.
Gee, okay,
2 hours.
That's good.
This guy's gonna be sabotaging the plane out here. But no, so. One question I wanted to ask you is something that we talked about at work. I remember one day, like, I'm always coming in and asking questions, So one day I remember I asked you a question. It's a little bit off of what we were just talking about, but about like imitation. Like, for example, each person has their own idea of things, right? They come up with their own idea, but everything has been imitated by somebody else. Right? And I was asking you, I was like, can anyone, like, is it possible for someone to steal your idea? And I think I was asking you, and you were telling me something along the lines of, no one can really steal your idea because you're still bringing you to it. Like, that's the thing that makes it different. Even though it's imitated, you adding yourself brings something new to it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is a line that you can cross where if you're just like straight up copying somebody,
that's fair.
Like, that's one thing, but like, like I think when we were having that conversation, it was based around music and different people doing different variations and stuff like that. And it was like, especially for something like music, it's again, unless you're straight up copying somebody's like melody or something like beat for beat kind of thing, then to me it's difficult because there's only, especially with music, like there's only so many chords to go around, and there's only so many ways that you can put those chords together, and it doesn't mean that all music has, like we've run out of original ideas or anything like that, but it's our own musical taste and our own idea of how we, especially if you're a musician, how you would construct music and stuff like that is all a learned experience. Like unless you're talking about somebody like a Mozart who's just like coming out of the womb like a savant that can just piece that stuff together kind of thing. But by and large, for most of us, that view of music or how it's pieced together is constructed for us over time based on the music that we're experienced to and the experiences that we have with that music and stuff like that. Sure. So, like I think it was we were talking about how, I think I mentioned that, when you look back at like the rock and roll invasion of North America in the 60s and stuff like that with like the Beatles starting it off, but more so like the Rolling Stones and stuff like that. Yeah. These guys that are sort of anointed as like the ones that brought rock and roll into the American consciousness. If you go back and you ask those guys like from the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, they're like, where did you guys come up with the idea to play this music? And a lot of them were saying like, well, we grew up listening to records that were like essentially American jazz musicians. So like B.B. King and Muddy Waters and like Louis Armstrong and Coltrane and stuff like that were these guys that were influencing them and were building their musical repertoire, and then they sort of came of age and started doing their own spin. But from their perspective, they were basically like, we were taking American jazz and selling it back to them as rock and roll kind of thing.
I think our own spin too. No, I like that because I think that no one can really copy you fully because everyone is their own unique individual, right? So they're gonna add something. Like I can maybe copy how you do your thing, but I'm still gonna add my own flair to it. It's not gonna be exactly the same as you because I'm different, right? So I think that's something a really cool idea that actually after you talked to me about that, it kind of gave me like a little bit more openness towards it. I was like, oh, you know what? Like no one can actually really imitate what you do, you know? True. So I think that was cool. But what I would like to ask you, Ryan, is throughout your life, now with all the life experiences and the things that you've been through, what are maybe like the 3 biggest lessons that you could take away from life so far, and maybe what's the most difficult thing that you've been through in your life, and how did you overcome it, and what did you learn from it?
So I guess the three biggest lessons that I've learned in my life. Yeah. I think it's humility, and sense of humor, man. Start like from the back end and work back. Like sense of humor and being able to not even laugh at like what's around you, but being able to laugh at yourself was huge for me. I think like most of us, especially like growing up through adolescence and like into your early 20s, there's a lot of, I feel like, inherent insecurity. Yeah. They say, I wish that I knew what I know now when I was younger. Yeah. For me, it's more of like the one thing I wish I knew when I was younger was like, just let go of that fear and that doubt that you have in yourself, because the only true freedom you have in this life is the freedom to be yourself and to be okay with yourself. And then you combine that with an ability to stay humble and keep yourself rooted in the ones that made you who you are for the better. Okay. Another conversation that I remember having with a student was, like trying to, and like remembering what it was like to be 16 and to feel like nobody gets it And like, you know, my friends are jerks and people bully me and my parents are super hard on me and stuff like that. And it was just like being able to say like, hold on tight, like you're almost there, and it'll get to a point when you can start to choose who you have around you, because you are the company you keep. So if you keep the people around you that fill you with that strength and that courage and that understanding that who you are is good enough no matter what anybody else tells you, then those are the ones that you hold on to. And anybody 100%. That's trying to convince you otherwise,
chop them off.
Ain't worth the grip.
Chop them off.
Absolutely.
I like that. I like that. What would you say? I know. I mean, probably I love experience of that. What would you say is one way to just chop somebody off that you know is bad? Would you say just cut them off completely out of your life? Would you say cut them off and just keep like a boundary? What would you say?
I mean, I think it depends who they are, right? Like if it's, you know, if it's a friend from school that you grew up with kind of thing, and it gets to a point where you just grow apart as humans, as adults or something like that, then like I find a lot of it, especially when you get, you know, north of 25 and people start having families and settling down and stuff like that, that a lot of that stuff kind of works itself out because everybody starts to sort of drift apart anyway. But yeah, like I know it's not easy and I know it's not necessarily desirable, but the second that you know that somebody is not good for you and is not providing a positive impact on your life, then they gotta go. The sooner the better, because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be.
Chop them off.
Sir.
Okay. Like well, we have a question that we always ask here on the Grind Theory podcast, which is, what is your theory of the grind?
What do you asked? Because I was going to say definition.
I mean, I guess to me, the grind that I'm focusing the most on is just constantly trying to better myself. And like it's the grind of being a good person and trying to do what's best for everybody. Try not to think just about myself and my needs. Having a lot of conversations with people about, you know, the topics of the day. We all know what's going on in the world right now, and the lines that get drawn in the sand because of it. And it's, you know, to me, we're all here together. You know, we're all gathered here in this collective society together. So if we're going to continue to operate as a collective society, then we need to start thinking less about me, and we need to start thinking more about we. Because honestly, like that's, if you look back through the course of human history, that's when we're at our best. That's when we do the great things and we achieve the great milestones and stuff. Is when we're all pulling together in the same direction.
That's true.
And in order to do that as a group, you need to have that foundation as an individual. And so and that comes from a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. You know, like going into your education with an open mind, sort of trying to check your biases at the door. And, you know, even for me, like going back to like what I learned as a teacher kind of thing is the best thing that I could do is to let them discover the information rather than just tell them. And to be honest with you, the best thing that I could do as a teacher most times was just to shut my mouth and let them talk and let them learn from each other, and kind of working into the experiences that you get with your traveling and stuff like that. It's like, it's one, you know, I don't exactly show up in another country and start being like, oh, your guys' fire hydrants are painted green. This is why we paint ours yellow back home. Like, no, like that's not what you're. Appreciate the moment and what you can learn from the moment, rather than what you have to apply to it yourself, kind of thing.
I like that. Appreciate what you can learn in the moment instead of what you have to apply. I think that's very unique. Because sometimes it's like if I'm listening to you in the podcast, right? And instead of me actively listening, I'm thinking of a question. I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask him this. I'm going to ask him this. Then I'm not actually listening to what you're saying, right? Because the question might just come from me listening to you, like being in present in the moment instead of me thinking of something that I can apply to. And I like what you said about it being more of a we instead of just me, because like in everything that in every grind that you do, like you need other people. Even the grinds that are by yourself, like tennis and stuff like that, you still need a trainer to hit the ball on the other side. You still need like different other elements, right? So you still need a group or a team or a collective to help you get to your goal. So I like that. I like that. Well, is there anything that you want to tell anyone about? Anything coming up? Anything exciting? Anything?
Be good to each other.
There you go. There you go. The gem of the day. Be good to each other. You hear that, Ori? Be good to each other.
What do you mean?
Ori's always roasting me, you know.
Hey,
so.
Look at all the episodes.
Look at all the episodes.
You know what?
What are they gonna find?
I already told him. Listen, I only roast you because, bro, you got me working from 7 to 7, bro. Listen, that's the only reason.
It's good though.
You got the week off too.
See, I did get the week off.
See, exactly. This is what I meant to be.
It's not about equalness, you know.
Listen.
It's not about equalness, you know. You have to know what your team needs. I knew that I need to do.
Don't worry, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna disappear soon. Don't worry. I think I can mount.
No. What do you mean? I just be gone for a month. It's okay. We'll be doing the Grind Theory podcast just solo, one host. But it was a pleasure to have you on, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, guys. It was lovely.
No, it was definitely a pleasure just to hear all your experiences, especially about the travel and all the other ventures and other things that you're doing too as well. But that is a wrap for the Grind Theory podcast. You guys know what to do.
Yeah.
Comment, like, subscribe,
Roast
follow.
Roast the kill.
Listen.
I saw the comment.
It's okay. Listen.
Roast him.
Listen, it doesn't matter what you guys do because I'm the cream. I will rise to the top no matter what situation you put me in.
Cut.
As always.
Cut.
As always.
Comment, subscribe.
All right, guys. Peace. We'll see you guys later.
Nah, man.